Hello there and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Thursday, June 19th, 2025, the 170th day of the year and Juneteenth, National Independence Day. That's the full name of the holiday, commemorating the day a large group of enslaved African Americans in Galveston, Texas, were freed by General Gordon Granger in 1865. If you know history, you may be thinking, wasn't that after the Emancipation Proclamation? Yes, more than 2 years after President Abe Lincoln, the first Republican president, signed the Emancipation Proclamation, the group was freed. A couple years later, many of those same African Americans helped create the Republican Party of Texas in Houston, Texas, part of the story that you don't hear much about, which today, Houston, Texas, as you likely know, is a pretty blue city. Juneteenth was established as a federal holiday by President Biden back in 2021, so federal offices are closed today. Most schools, the post office, banks, and even the stock markets are closed in observance of the holiday as well. More on the holiday in a few minutes from Greg Kelly. But first, President Trump addressing questions on Iran at the White House yesterday.
Making your decision on Iran. Obviously, there's been a change from when you were pursuing a diplomatic negotiation. Yeah. Now, you seem very open to the idea of potentially taking U.S. action. Obviously, you're not going to tell us that. Can you walk us through what contributed to that change, how you got to where you are in making your decision now? Well, I think it started the first night. I mean, that first night was devastating. And it really knocked the one side off, as you know. It was a devastating evening, day. And it pretty much proceeded that way. I have a meeting in the war room in a little while, situation room, as some people call it. So we're going to meet. We're going to see. We're in the midst of it's a terrible thing. I hate to see it. I hate to see all that death, so much death and destruction. But death primarily is what I hate to see. Does that mean you haven't made a decision yet on what to do? I have ideas as to what to do, but I haven't made a final. I like to make the final decision 1 second before it's due, because things change. I mean, especially with war. Things change with war. It can go from one extreme to the other. War is very bad. There was no reason for this to be a war. There was no reason for Russia, Ukraine. A lot of wars there was no reason for.
If you watch that news conference on Newsmax, there was an Italian soccer team visiting the White House for an event to promote the FIFA World Cup, and they're standing behind Trump in the Oval Office while he's being questioned about Iran and nuclear weapons. And the look on some of their faces was like, holy cow, we didn't sign up for this. We just came to promote football, right? President also took some questions from reporters outside the White House while visiting the crew that was installing those two huge flagpoles. This is Newsmax White House correspondent Mike Carter.
Hey, Bianca, lots going on here at the White House, including this construction here behind me. We'll get to that in a moment. But today, Iran's supreme leader saying that President Trump's call for an unconditional surrender simply is not going to work for the Iranian regime. Iran also warning the United States not to get involved militarily today, saying if it does, the U.S. will face irreparable damage. All right, let's talk about what's going on behind me here. Today, President Trump unveiling two 100-foot flagpoles, one on the south lawn of the White House, one on the north lawn. And earlier this morning, the president, in a press gaggle while watching these flagpoles go up, talked about what he meant by unconditional surrender.
What does unconditional surrender mean?
Well, you know what it means, unconditional.
Can you explain it for those who don't?
Two very simple words, very simple. Unconditional surrender. That means I've had it. Okay, I've had it. I give up. No more. Then we go blow up all the, all the nuclear stuff that's all over the place there. No, they had bad intentions. For 40 years they've been saying death to America, death to Israel, death to anybody else that they didn't like. They were bullies. We've been threatened by Iran for many years. If you go back and look at my history, if you go back 15 years, I was saying we cannot let Iran get a nuclear weapon. I've been saying it for a long time.
And the president saying today it's never too late for talks, but saying talks should have begun at least a week ago. Right now, since military involvement with the United States, potential military involvement, is already causing a rift between the MAGA base, J.D. Vance coming out yesterday on X and saying this, beefing up President Trump's stance on Iran, saying, I have yet to see a single good argument for why Iran needed to enrich uranium well above the threshold for civilian use. I've yet to see a single good argument for why Iran was justified in violating its non-proliferation obligations. I've yet to see a single good pushback against the IAEA's findings. That's the International Atomic Energy Agency.
Newsmax White House correspondent Michael Carter outside the White House yesterday. And then last night, there were reports that the president may have made a decision. More from Rob Schmitt.
Wall Street Journal is reporting tonight a bit of breaking news that the president has signed off on a plan to strike Iran's nuclear facilities. That is where we start tonight, and that likely means the Fordo facility, the only Iranian nuclear facility that Israel can't quite get to, requiring our American $4 million bunker buster bomb and a stealth bomber to drop it. And now, of course, we're seeing the New York Times saying that Iran is ready to meet. Obviously, they want to stall as long as possible and try to get into another weeks-long negotiation. Not surprising. So it could be a very interesting night. It could be a very interesting couple of days as we watch the skies over Israel and also over Iran at 2 o'clock in the morning in the Middle East. That's Tel Aviv right there on the screen, a live picture. The New York Post is reporting some new polling today from JL Partners that 65% of MAGA Republicans support strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. 51% of generic Republican voters also support the strikes on the nuke program of the world's largest sponsor of terrorism. But over the past few days, the president has taken some tremendous heat from the MAGA coalition that he himself created. Some huge names in MAGA world. We talked about this last night. Tucker, Steve Bannon, Marjorie Taylor Greene, all preemptively criticizing the president for dragging the United States into another Middle East forever war, regime change, nation building, and all the nonsense that we have seen in this country over the last 30 years. And they sound good as they say it because nobody wants to see that stuff. The only problem is pretty obvious if you know the man that's running the White House right now. If you think about what he's said over the years, what his politics are, that he clearly has no intention of doing that at all. He has no intention of dragging this country onto another escapade in the Middle East that takes 10 or 15 years and trillions of dollars and leaves us weaker than where we started. Think about what he believes and what he says. He again clarified earlier today. Take a listen.
We're looking for a long time. Yeah. We're looking. I only want one thing. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Right. That's it. I'm not looking long-term, short-term. And I've been saying that for 20 years. I've been saying it as a civilian who got a lot of publicity. People would cover it. Very simply, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's it.
That's it. This is not Iraq. This is certainly not Afghanistan. There's no agenda for a long, drawn-out war, regime change, nation building, all of that. The Israelis have already done much of what Trump wants to see in a matter of 6 days. Right now, Trump is shaking up Iran's leadership to put them in a panic, to force a full capitulation. And if he can't get that, and he probably won't, it sounds like he's ready to greenlight a speedy operation to knock out the nuclear program and just walk away. A very, very, very weakened Iran won't have a great amount of options in that moment.
Rob Schmitt is the host of Rob Schmitt Tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern. Right before that, Greta Van Susteren spoke with the president of Israel, Isaac Herzog, on the record.
Mr. President, there's no doubt it would make things easier, but knowing how smart, clever, and of course the pager incident last September, that operation bears that out. But with Israel so smart, clever, and tough, does Israel really need the United States to destroy and eliminate Fordo nuclear enrichment facility?
Look, it's not a wisdom contest, although I'm very proud of my fellow countrymen. For your viewers, I would say that I'm the head of state. I'm not the head of the executive branch. That's Prime Minister Netanyahu. But I would say that we, in Israel, we've launched this operation in order to remove a clear and present imminent threat on Israel of a nuclear capability, which is the worst danger of all, by the Iranians, but we are also serving the national security interests of many nations, including the United States of America, because after all, we know the Iranians declare the United States as their enemy. The Iranians have carried out terror activities all over the world with proxies against American interests and Israeli interests and other interests and Western interests. So what we are doing by delineating and removing this capability, as the German Chancellor said yesterday, he said Israel's doing the dirty work for us. And we are doing it because we have to defend our people.
I think, though, a lot of viewers may not realize or may not have thought this out, but this back in 1979 is really when this began. That's when the Islamic Revolution.
Right.
That's when Iran started.
You and I still remember that.
Yeah. Iran threatened the United States, threatened Israel, took over the American embassy, kidnapped our people for more than a year in the embassy. And so this actually starts back. So what took so long? Because Iran has been a threat not just to Israel, but to the world since that point. So what took so long?
And it's amazing how many American presidents and how many world leaders came over and said, Iran is a threat to the world. Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. Iran cannot have ballistic missiles, et cetera, et cetera. And meanwhile, because especially in the free world, you know, it's natural that people want to go on with their lives and do good. And the political systems are always focused on themselves. That there was a rise of this threat going on and on and on. Meanwhile, Iran has alliances with, with other countries, whether it's Russia or China or others, and they were trying to bypass all the sanction regimes, etc. And we came to this moment where we had to take a historic decision because they were very close to a breakout capability to a bomb. And this would have meant a totally different Middle East, subordinate. I mean, serving the wish and desire of the Iranians to reign over this region. And this is the most dangerous phenomena that would have risked Europe and the United States as well.
Well, Israel, the tiny little nation, I think there are probably 75 Israels could be put into the nation of Iran. It's so much bigger. But this actually, this operation to get their nuclear facilities, and I don't think that you can lose sight of the fact that October 7th was paid for and financed by Iran. And I don't know how many people were slaughtered, 1,300 on that day. So Iran hasn't just all of a sudden come up on the radar screen in the last week. They have had their fingerprints on everything back to 1979. And, of course, we see what happened in October of 23.
Greta Van Susteren on the record with Israeli President Isaac Herzog. There is a White House press briefing this afternoon where we should learn a lot more about the discussion in the Situation Room last night and any decisions that the president has or hasn't made along with his national security team. Let's go back to President Trump in the Oval Office. One question that was asked outside of Israel and Iran was about former President Joe Biden.
The Senate Judiciary Committee is holding a hearing on who exactly was running the White House under Joe Biden. Who do you think that was?
I think the autopen ran the White House. We have an autopen president before me. I think it's one of the greatest scandals in the history of this country, one of the biggest scandals. He wasn't making a decision. And
we go from the White House over to Capitol Hill where that Senate hearing was happening. This is Republican Senator Josh Hawley, also an attorney, an absolute gunslinger in Senate hearings.
The visual, sometimes it really is true. A picture speaks louder than words. It's worth 1,000 words. And here all you have to do is look over at this side of the dais to see that the stone wall continues. I mean, from the party that lied to this nation for 4 years. Where are they now? They don't want to answer for any of those quotes now. They lied to us for 4 years, and we know they lied. They know they lied. It's why they're not here. They don't want to answer a single question. They can't bear to show their faces in public.
Tonight's Red Hot video, Missouri Senator Josh Hawley today calling out the Democrats who failed to show up at the Senate Judiciary hearing. looking into the mental capacity of Joe Biden and the apparent indiscriminate use of the autopen. Daniel Lippman, I mean, the Democrats not showing up. They should have invited Karine Jean-Pierre, who basically now is not even a Democrat.
They were just taking after the press corps.
She could have hawked her book and had a book selling.
That's right.
Book signing. Although even the people in the audience, it was like 1/4 full. And so I think what Democrats are saying is, hey, why are they having this hearing more than 6 months, basically 6 months after the presidency of Joe Biden ended?
Makes a lot of sense, because look what passed.
Whereas the House and Representatives and Senate, they haven't really done one accountability or oversight hearing in actual substance of the Trump administration, and there's tons of things they can do oversight of there. So that's how every side works. But it is kind of ironic that they're still up,
that is funny.
doing this.
We're dealing with the consequences of 4 years of an MIA president.
If the Democrats had looked into this in congressional hearings, why Joe Biden's autopen was in charge of the country and why Joe Biden's brain had checked out years before.
It's a broke.
If the Democrats had conducted these hearings, then they wouldn't have to be done once the House and the Senate rolled over.
They lied about it.
The freaking press would have covered it. Give me
That's exactly
a break.
Right.
They didn't cover this issue. They ignored it for quite some time. And then you have, who's the guy that came out? Jake Tapper saying, oh, wait a second, I'm so sorry, I missed it.
That's Mercedes Schlapp along with Chris Plante and the rest of the Right Squad, 10 p.m. Eastern on Newsmax. Always fun with both sides of the aisle in the conversation and debate. A new Rasmussen poll released yesterday shows President Trump's approval rating is at 56%. This is the open of last night's Greg Kelly reports.
What, are you kidding me? 56% approval in a brand new Rasmussen poll for President Trump. 56% of the American people think he's doing a great job. That is a landslide. That is awesome. And you consider everything he's up against and everything he's going through and everything that, all the innovation that he's come up with and the constant loud opposition of the media, and his numbers at 56%. You know who that beats? Ronald Reagan at this point in his second term, just 52%. It reminds me, the Gipper and President Trump together. Isn't this an amazing picture? The two of them at some function at the White House. Look at that. We've got the 40th president and the 45th and the 47th president all in one spot. It's pretty awesome. So 56%. That is historic. I always knew that actually President Trump's vision would be popular. What's really not to like about it? When you get through all of the rhetoric and the distortions, make America great again, having borders, not sexualizing children, not getting into forever wars and then not winning them, it just has mass appeal. And you think about where he was a year ago, not even a year ago. He was still going through all of this nonsense, all of this crap. And today, 56% in the polls. That's important. It's not just some number. It's important for him to get his agenda completed, right? People respond. People in the Beltway, they respect a number like that a lot.
When Greg says, think about where President Trump was a year ago, he's showing photos of Donald Trump in the New York courtroom back then, right? And the mugshot. Back at the open, when I talked about today being Juneteenth, I said more on the holiday coming up from Greg Kelly. This is Greg talking about Juneteenth a year ago.
Why is tomorrow officially a national holiday? Because it was an operation to get Trump. Who remembers COVID? Of course, we all do. 2020, the whole country was shut down. Now, part of that stunt, and COVID, yeah, parts of it were a stunt to undermine Trump, to stop everything so he would not be reelected. You know, he was anxious. It killed him that he was in the White House, that he had to stay in the White House. So he said finally, you know what? We're having a rally. We're doing it. We're going outside, and we're going to have a rally in a great big arena. And then they found out, oh, he wants to have it on June 19th. What's the problem? Well, they looked it up, and somebody said, it's Juneteenth, don't you know? Now, nobody knew, and nobody really cared, but it was a way to get Trump.
Trump is so oblivious, he didn't even realize how messed up it would be to have a rally on Juneteenth.
Listen, Brother Trump, man, I'm born in Tulsa, so I don't want to get started with Tulsa now.
Donald Trump originally planned his first rally on Juneteenth. just right by the site of one of the worst racist slaughters in American history.
All right. Who could do such a thing? Schedule something for June 19th. Juneteenth, don't you know? All right. In a moment, I'll show you Obama cracking jokes and not saying anything about Juneteenth every year of his presidency. This was a political weapon, and it was just used to trip up Trump. Now, it didn't, but they had some fun with it. I'm going to show you some examples of Obama partying globally on Juneteenth. Let's do the first one. He didn't say a damn thing about it publicly. Cracking jokes his first Juneteenth. Maybe as the first black president, he would say something substantive about this very important day. He didn't.
I want to express my appreciation for the opportunity to tell jokes that weren't funny enough for me to use when we did this 5 weeks ago. Whatever.
You know, he didn't say anything all that funny, but they laughed like crazy there. You know, the Obama. That's the kind of treatment he got at the swap. All right, next. He goes, I think, overseas with, this is a great big rally in Berlin. And he doesn't say anything about Juneteenth. Nope.
As I've said, Angela and I don't exactly look like previous German and American leaders.
All right, and he got a bit of a laugh. What's the point there? Oh, he's black and Angela Merkel is white. How disrespectful. I find it very offensive that he did not say anything about Juneteenth. Very offensive that he's hanging around Berlin on Juneteenth. And here's another one a few years later at the White House, again, cracking jokes. For a not funny guy, he loved to crack jokes.
At the White House, he had the old Bulls theme song, and it set a very high bar, as if I was Michael Jordan coming out.
Yeah, right. I'll work on that. So he didn't give a damn about Juneteenth. Nobody did until Donald Trump came around and they tried to use it for him. Joe Biden does not know to this day. If you asked him what Juneteenth is or was, he has no clue, as we learned publicly.
He's going down to Texas on Juneteenth, right? The first major massacre, literally speaking, of the Black Wall Street, right? Years ago.
Yeah, no, it's not that. People tend to conflate them and whatever, but he's wrong. And he's the president. And he signed this damn thing into law.
Greg Kelly reports 9 p.m. Eastern on Newsmax. Biden in that clip is talking about the Tulsa Race Massacre, right? Known as the Black Wall Street Massacre in 1921. Juneteenth, which is all about Galveston, Texas in the 1800s. But I guarantee you the black professor there on MSNBC who said he was born in Tulsa, and let's not even talk about Tulsa when he was talking about Trump, I'm sure he thought Biden was fine and he was all ready to vote for him again. Speaking of Tulsa, Oklahoma City, the Thunder could win the NBA championship tonight in Indianapolis. They lead the series over the Indiana Pacers 3-2. And there was a lot going around on social media yesterday about the WNBA, and they better get their you-know-what together. I retweeted some tweet about Caitlin Clark saying that maybe she should just think about resigning, and in a couple of weeks, the whole league will be a sinking ship. What's going on is ludicrous, and you either know what I'm talking about or you don't, but a lot of reaction and commentary on social media, rightfully so. If there is a professional women's league in Europe, she should go play over there. She would still get plenty of endorsements, which is how she's making most of her money anyway. Okay, so Wall Street and most everything else is closed in observance of the holiday today. There is a White House press briefing this afternoon, as I mentioned, and the president will be participating in another swearing-in ceremony in the Oval Office later today, which means we should be hearing a lot more from the president once again today. Oh, and yesterday I mentioned RFK Jr. and HHS with Heinz and General Mills agreeing to remove dyes from their products, right? Kennedy tweeting yesterday, glad to see Sam's Club taking action, removing more than 40 ingredients, including artificial colors and aspartame from its private label brand. Sam's Club, of course, owned by Walmart. So these are huge developments and big strides towards making America healthy again. So once again, kudos to Bobby Kennedy Jr. and HHS. Keep up with all of the news and breaking developments throughout the day on Newsmax, N2, and at Newsmax.com, of course. The news starts each and every morning with Wake Up America, followed by National Report, Newsline with Bianca De La Garza, American Agenda, Carl Higbee, Chris Salcedo, Finnerty at 8, Greg Kelly at 9, and much, much more. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Newsmax Daily. I appreciate it. Continue to share it. Make sure you subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. Enjoy the rest of your day. Pay attention and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.